Okay, welcome back to Man Cave Meals, all grain brewing. We're ready to start bottling this beer, and I've got all my bottles ready. I haven't gone through and shown you this process, but each of these bottles has to be washed first, and you just use a brush. They make a special brush for getting down inside the bottle and cleaning it out, and you wash it and rinse it really good. And then we still have to sanitize each of these bottles, so let me show you that. Okay, I have my bottle sanitizer right on top of my bottle tree. So we're gonna just take the bottle and put it upside down and squirt two bits of that on there, and then stick the bottle right on the tree to let it drain. And we're gonna do that for every bottle. And it takes a few minutes, but it's something that's got to be done. Remember I said earlier, anything that touches the beer after it's boiled has to be sanitized. So I'm going to run through and sanitize these right quick, and we'll be right back. Okay, now that we have our bottles clean and ready to go, the next step of the process is to boil about 1.5 cups of water, and then turn the heat off. And I've got 4.2 ounces of corn sugar. It's dextrose. It's the same corn sugar that we use in the hard cider, which you'll see later. And we're just going to dump that in and take it, just lift it up off the heat and stir that in to let that dissolve. You want to get it all dissolved, and you don't want to scorch any of it, so it dissolves very quickly in the water. So we'll turn the heat off and leave that there. And our next step is we're going to transfer our fermented beer from the fermenter into the bottling bucket. Okay, I'm working in kind of tight quarters here. I'm going to show you the method for doing this. We're going to use the auto siphon tool that I showed you earlier in the equipment video. We're going to just drop the tube right down in there and give this guy a pump or two to get our siphon started. It starts very easily, and you want to set that down and just let it go, and we will fill that bottling bucket. And it takes a few minutes to siphon all that out. We're actually going to be going through this process twice. I'm only going to show you once in the video though, because if you remember, we have 2 fermenters, and so everything we're doing here is going to happen twice in order to bottle this 10 gallons of beer. So let me move this over. You can see this coming in here a little better. During this process, you want to minimize the opportunities for adding oxygen to the beer, so you don't want to splash this stuff around any at this point. When this finishes, I'm going to come back and show you what's left in the bottom of the fermenter. Once our beer starts flowing into the bottling bucket, we're going to slowly pour our sugar solution in, just right down the sides. And you may wonder why we're adding more sugar. Well, if you remember when I explained the process earlier, the yeast consumes the sugar and produces carbon dioxide and alcohol. Well, during our fermentation, our yeast consumed all of the fermentable sugar in this beer. So in order to carbonate this beer in the sealed bottles, we need to add a little bit more sugar back, which is what we've just done. And when we put the caps on the bottle and seal it, the yeast will continue to consume that little bit of extra sugar, produce a tiny bit more alcohol, and produce carbon dioxide under pressure in the bottle, which will carbonate the beer. So we'll let this finish running off. Okay, you can see our yeast cake here that's left over in the bottom of this bottling bucket. That's leftover yeast from the brewing process. That yeast multiplies into billions and billions of cells during the process. So we have our leftover, and then we have our beer in the bottling bucket that's ready to bottle. So this bucket right here, there's 2 things that you can do with this. First of all, if you're not brewing immediately, I'd recommend cleaning this guy out. Don't let it sit, because it makes a mess, it stinks, and it's hard to clean out. Now if you're bottling, if you're brewing another batch of beer, you can use this yeast again right away. So we'll talk about that down the road, about how to reuse yeast, but right now we're going to set this guy up and get ready to bottle. I'll show you how it goes into bottles. Okay, I've got a little balancing act going on here where I set my bottling bucket up high. I've got my sanitized bottle filler, which I'm going to set the tip of it right down in a bottle, and then I'm going to put this hose right over the spigot on the bottling bucket. This also goes on a little easier if you wet it, but it slides right on there. Okay, and then we can turn our spigot down just like this, and now I'm going to show you how to fill and cap the two types of bottles we're using. Okay, our spring-loaded bottle filler looks just like this. There's a spring-loaded tip that when I put it in here in the bottle, and then when I open the valve on the bottling bucket, it will allow my beer to flow out, and then when I push down on the bottom of the bottle with this tip, it allows the beer to flow through. So we're going to fill this bottle, and we're going to fill it all the way to the very brim. And this is a 22-ounce glass bottle, so we're going to fill it right to the brim. And then when we remove the bottle filler, it'll leave just the right amount of headspace for carbonation. So this bottle's coming up to the top here. I don't know how well you can see this. We're going to put it right to the top, and then when we pull that out, it leaves, just like I said, the right amount of headspace. Now we're going to fill our Grolsch style bottle that has a different type of lid on it. If you don't want to mess with bottle caps, you can collect these bottles that have the Grolsch style lid, but using those, you periodically need to replace the gaskets on them because the gaskets will get hard and dry out and won't form a good seal. So that one's full. So now I'm going to set this aside and show you how we cap. For the Grolsch style bottles, capping is very easy. All you do is flip the lid up and then seal it down. That guy's sealed and ready to carbonate, so that's how easy that is. So now let's look at one that uses a regular style cap. Okay, I've got my bottle capper adjusted for the height of this bottle, so we're going to let the magnet hold the cap in place. Then we'll hold the bottle in place and pull down on the handle, and it'll seal right down on there and put a perfect cap on this bottle. So that's all there is to capping these. When you're using a lot of different size bottles, I try to get all the same size bottles together where I don't have to adjust the height of the capper so much. But that's all there is to this. That's gonna wrap up the actual production process. I'm not gonna show you all the bottling because I've got nearly 100 bottles here that are gonna have to be filled. So we will get them filled, and 2 weeks from now we'll be back to have a taste test. So be sure and come back for the final part. Until then, Man Cave Meals.